questions?
Okay, awesome. So everyone, I am just going to unmute you now. You're all muted if you didn't notice.
Jesse, a question for you. It's Nate here.
Hey, Nate.
I'm curious about those smaller nonprofits we work with who are using the out-of-the-box one-page content type website where about our mission and all of those content pages, all of that content is on the homepage effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Are they being penalized because they don't have separate subpages with that content?
Yeah. Penalized, I wouldn't say is the right word for it, but they're definitely inhibiting their own potential. So with having multiple pages, you're able to focus the messaging for each topic for that page with that. So if you have all of your information on one long page, it's going to be very hard for Google to discern what exactly this page is about.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. No problem. Yeah. Any other questions?
I am unmuting everyone, but some people are staying muted. So I'm hoping that is a choice that everyone has enabled.
Just maybe one more question. Yeah. Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
Dominating here. I don't mean to.
That's okay.
Again, thinking about nonprofit clients, a lot of them don't have Google Analytics set up. Are you, and I think one of the reasons for some of the legal nonprofits is the concern about using Google. Is there a way to have analytics incorporated into a WordPress site without necessarily having a Google account, or is that just not possible?
I think there are paid analytics platforms out there. Obviously, if you're a nonprofit, that's going to create a few challenges there. But you can anonymize the data to Google. But the thing is with them, they are a for-profit business and they do take that information and use it for their products and such. So if it's Squarespace offers analytics within their platform, they're not as robust as Google Analytics, but that can be an option. But there are some third-party platforms that you might be able to get a nonprofit status and a discounted rate for those analytics.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I have a question for you, Jesse. If somebody wants to learn more about SEO and digital marketing and stuff like that, are there any particular courses or platforms you would suggest they check out?
Yeah, SEMrush has a great training school, as well as Google does as well. Google doesn't really do an SEO specific one because they don't want to hint at parts of their algorithm with that class. But Google has some great ones on their analytics platform, as well as their paid advertising platform.
Cool. Okay, so SEMrush and then Google.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Those are usually really good ones.
Awesome. And I have one more question. So you mentioned, obviously, Google is kind of like the big kid in town when it comes to search engines, but you mentioned Bing. And then I know there's also another search engine that's pretty new. It's called DuckDuckGo. Is optimizing for these search engines important, or is it different or anything like
that? Google makes up 95% of the search engine market, especially in North America. Bing is relevant, but they have a very different scoring system and a different algorithm than Google's. And so if you go to optimize for Bing or even DuckDuckGo or Baidu, any of the other ones, you're going to end up hurting your ability to rank well in Google. So that being said, though, Bing is still relevant. It can make up about 3 to 5% of your traffic, so be mindful of it. But I wouldn't say prioritize that algorithm over Google's.
Great. Okay, perfect. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yes, I do. Barry speaking here. How's it going, Jesse?
Good. How are you, Barry?
Great. Is the tactics and the what we discussed here the same applied to Google Maps? So, for example, when I'm looking for something, I don't necessarily open Google. I just go right to Google Maps and search within there because A, I'm looking for something, but B, I want to see how far away that is from where I am. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a completely separate strategy when we're looking at Google Maps.
Yeah, local SEO is very, very different because, first of all, that is very, like, as you mentioned, you're looking to see how close they are to you. So proximity to the user is a big ranking factor. The other side of that, though, too, is that if you're targeting a specific community, like Vancouver, or even going smaller like Yaletown or downtown, you want to make sure that you have those keywords within the copy. So be sure to like actively target the cities that you service, but also be mindful that reviews play a big factor in that search result for the maps, and proximity. So if a person is in Surrey looking for financial services, they're going to see a map result for Surrey and not Vancouver.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah. So consider that when you're building out your strategy, that you might want to have a specific landing page that talks about helping the Surrey community, as well as like any of the other surrounding neighborhoods and areas that you want to target.
Great. Thanks.
You're welcome. Mm-hmm.
Oh, hi, Jesse. I've got a question for you
Mm-hmm.
regarding, you mentioned links on your website. So links that link to other pages on your website. Is it possible to have too many of these on your page, or can you expand a little bit about those?
Yeah, that's a great question. There is such a thing as too many links. So coming into a bit more of the technical side of this part is that with a web page, it has a total value that it can share. So let's say it's out of 100. For every link that you have on your page, that score of 100 gets distributed to those links. So the more links that you have, the more diluted the score becomes. So if you take a look at it that way, if you have like over 100 links, you might want to consider bringing that down to, maybe 50 or 20. But yeah, that does matter. But again, like if you don't have more than 50 or 100 links, it's not a big deal.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Brandon has asked a question in the chat. He asked, is it important for websites to have a blog of some kind, or is it unnecessary?
I would say it's extremely necessary, because it serves two purposes. Well, more than that, but the biggest ones are, one, it helps you communicate like who you are and what your brand is about, but also it helps demonstrate your expertise in that space. And the third part is that it helps you to target keywords that are closely related to what it is that you offer, that don't necessarily directly relate to what you offer. And what I mean by that, it would be like, from a search engine optimization perspective, we may not have a specific page that talks about, how, or we don't have a service necessarily that talks about optimizing images, but we might create a blog post that talks about how to optimize those images. So it helps to catch all the peripheral terms, and helps to really demonstrate your expertise in your space. And that's ultimately what Google's looking for.
Okay, and sounds like Gordon has another question, a follow-up question about this.
Jesse, good morning, and thank you so much for all of this today. You can hear me okay, yeah?
Yep, great.
Brilliant. So I don't have a blog on my website, but I link to my Medium blog. Is that going to be advantageous, or is it better to pull and, to basically cut and paste it all onto my own website?
Yeah, the thing with using platforms like Medium or LinkedIn or Facebook is that those companies own that experience. Whereas if you have the content on your website, you own that experience. You own that traffic that comes to you, and you get to manage that as you see fit. So I always recommend like have the content first on your own website, because it will help build the authority for your domain, and then share it on Medium, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever else you want to afterwards, because this will give your website a lot more substance, and it will give you a place to send visitors that are interested to learn more about you. If you have everything on Medium, then you have to compete with all the other people that are on Medium as well, and you could lose that opportunity to connect with people.
Mm-hmm. So Jesse, just a quick one there.
Mm-hmm.
When you say afterwards or later, are we talking like 5 minutes later or a week later? Any suggestions around that?
I would say maybe like 3 to 7 days.
Okay.
And this gives the Google time to crawl your website first. And also, like, you can add to all of your third-party websites. This article was originally found, and link back to your own website.
Mm-hmm.
You can link to that article. You're welcome. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Brandon's asked another question. Okay, Brandon says, do I need a Google My Business profile?
That's a great question, in that it depends. If you're a local business serving local customers, like Barry is, and like many of you, then yeah, it's really useful, because without that Google My Business listing, you can't show up in the map results. So you should have it. It's also free, and it'll give you opportunities to collect reviews from users, tell them when you're open, and send any like quick updates about your current business. So you don't need one, but it's highly recommended.
Jesse, can I ask a follow-up question on that?
Of course.
I had someone who's got a home-based business, similar setup as mine, and they don't have a physical brick-and-mortar service storefront. Google shut their Google My Business profile down because of that. Is that actually something that can happen? So how you get?
I mean, I would tell that person, like, now most businesses are coming out of their home, so Google will probably look the other way. There was a time when Google said no home businesses, but they are shifting their tone. If you do get a warning like that, you can say that you do a service area and don't show your address. So that can be a way to get around that. But I think nowadays Google understands that there are a lot of freelancers and home run businesses that do use a residential address rather than a business address. Mm-hmm. So they shouldn't be removing listings for that anymore.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, and we've had another chat question here. Richard has asked, does it help to put keywords and phrases in the header section of the HTML code as comments?
Don't do that. So
it's a good question.
It's a very good question, because that used to be a way of hiding content. Google doesn't look at that content, but also it can be seen as trying to manipulate the search results. And hiding content from users like that can have a really negative impact on your website. Yeah, the fact that you know that's pretty clever. But yeah, I would avoid any content like that can be hidden. Will severely impact negatively your website.
Mm.
Yeah, good question though.
Okay, that's awesome. Does anyone else have any questions? Everyone's pretty good. Okay. If you think of any questions later on, feel free to email myself or Jesse or the info at Method and Metric email where you received the link to this webinar. We're happy to answer any questions. And of course, you can reach us on LinkedIn or Twitter, Instagram, even whatever platform is your preference. We also recorded this webinar today, so we will be sending out a link to you once more with a link to the webinar if you want to watch it again or send it to someone or go back over a certain section that maybe you missed. Just once again, thank you all so much for coming today. It really means so much to us, and we're so happy to share this knowledge with you. And thank you all so much for donating to the food bank. I know we all are trying to help any way that we can. So thank you all once again.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, guys.
Sweet. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, you're welcome. Have a great afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your days.